we hear, this is what we hear, right? Not that Israel and the United States are accepting a ceasefire or what have you, and they agree. No, that Hamas actually agreed to extend the ceasefire by 2 months in exchange for the release of live hostages. Now, where does that report come from, and how substantiated is it? Is it true? And are they only agreeing to a temporary ceasefire and not going into phase 2? What is it exactly about? Well, number one, this hasn't been confirmed by any official in Hamas that they have accepted a temporary deal such as the one that Israel was calling for and proposing. But we did have an elaboration. This report was quoting Al Arabiya, which is a Saudi newspaper. Israel also, Al Arabiya is a Saudi Arabia media, and they have a channel too, website as well. Israel quoted them, trying to show that, oh, actually, Hamas are now backing down. Now, this Israeli report is saying also that there has been a success in the talks between the United States and Hamas directly. So Hamas, like we spoke in the previous video, one of the previous videos, they've had direct talks with the United States administration. And those talks between Hamas and the United States, they had several rounds and they were going on for weeks. There was also another confirmation today that, well, Donald Trump was supposed to actually go out on Tuesday and declare that this ceasefire agreement that they've reached with Hamas was actually successful. But Israel leaked the report, and then all of this mess happened. Donald Trump had to cancel it, and then he had these statements again with the hell Gaza. They will pay with hell, as if, hell is something monetary, people paying with hell currency, probably where his mind at 24/7. And he had to delay it. But now they're saying in Israel that no, actually, there was a success, although Israel wasn't happy. But now they're trying to sugarcoat it slightly and hide their unhappiness with direct talks between Israel and Hamas, saying that it succeeded, and that's why Hamas accepted this temporary deal. And we'll get to the temporary deal in a bit. But Hamas talking with the United States, there was more clarification about this talk. And by the way, this temporary deal, for those of you who don't know, is supposed to be something between phase 1 and 2, where Israel does not necessarily adhere to all of the requirements of phase 2, which include full withdrawal, including from the buffer zone, the Philadelphia line, which they're supposed to withdraw from now, really, then a declaration of them ending the war and ending the talks about everything to do with rebuilding Gaza, including allowing all of the aid in line with the Arab proposal that's now getting a backing from the EU. EU is starting to take positions that are different slightly from the United States now. Firstly, there was a joint press conference or statement from Britain, France, and Germany supporting continuation of the ceasefire in Gaza. And now they're saying they are supporting the proposal that came from Egypt towards Gaza. So as a matter of fact, we're having the Palestinian side, the Arab side, the European side, and many other countries supporting the rebuilding of Gaza according to the Egyptian proposal. A very thorough proposal, by the way, that included many things in relation to the rebuilding itself, the infrastructure, facilities, housing, technological center, the expansion of the Gaza territories, the Israeli withdrawal, security arrangements, training the police force, and also dealing with the case of the weapons of the resistance, however, in a gradual manner where it doesn't affect the ceasefire itself. So everyone is accepting this, apart from the United States and Israel. That's it. Going back to Hamas and the United States, and did they actually agree to this temporary ceasefire that does not include going into phase 2 and Israel declaring the end of the war and Hamas releasing live Israeli prisoners of war and potentially some more bodies of Israeli prisoners of war in Gaza? Soldiers. Most of the ones remaining are soldiers now. Hamas and the Palestinian resistance left them to the final stage. Well, there was further clarification coming from a man called Mahmoud al-Mirdawi. Mahmoud al-Mirdawi is a senior leading figure of Hamas, and he firstly started off by saying, number one, in relation to the talks between Hamas and the United States, we clarify that, number one, our red line, according to him, is not talking with Israel. However, he said, we don't mind speaking with any other country on the planet, which includes the United States, despite them being the backers of Israel. And he was legitimizing talking with the United States. However, he was asked about the recent reports that said Hamas accepted a temporary ceasefire based on the proposal coming from the United States that does not necessarily entail going into phase 2 of the agreement, which would lead Israel to confirm that they will be ending the war and withdrawing from Gaza and all of things that Benjamin Netanyahu does not want. He said, no, we did not agree to such a deal. He confirmed that there are positive talks to move forward on phase 2. Not to move forward with a temporary deal. And this is where the key problematic element lies. And the form in which this proposal or this agreement will be published. Number one, there are no confirmations yet, firstly. Secondly, the only thing that we have is positive progress. However, there is a confirmation of that progress coming and being reported and also confirmed by Hamas. So there are results coming from these negotiations, but these results are not related to a temporary deal. They're related to going into phase 2 of the agreement, which would include Israel declaring the end of the war, Israel fully withdrawing from Gaza, and the Palestinians rebuilding Gaza and continuing to ceasefire and a bigger prisoner exchange. And in relation to the prisoner exchange, Israel is trying to dictate who it releases in bigger numbers now. There were reports that Israel said to the Palestinian side, or the mediators, because the Palestinian side is not direct talk to them, we will have to dictate 50 names. The Palestinians said, no, you're not going to be dictating 50 names. You can only dictate 10 names. And for those of you who don't know what that means, when the Palestinians hand in a list to Israel, Israel will have a say in some of the names who will be released or those who follow under that criteria. For example, Hamas asks them, we want to release 50 or 100, for example, people with life sentences. You have an option to dictate, and that's, of course, following an Israeli request, probably an Israeli demand, and it has been something that happened in previous prisoner exchange deals, and now again. You can have an agreement or a reservation on certain names. There's not going to be more than 10. Why? Because the longer we progress into the ceasefire agreement, the bigger the names are. As in, the more serious they are, the more serious accusations, the heavier the sentence is, the more popular they are. Now, so far, the Palestinians released significant figures from Israeli prisons, including the longest serving Palestinian prisoner, who is Nael al-Barouthi. He's not in Palestine, he's in Egypt temporarily. But Israel wants to dictate the names of those who will come after him. Now, these names will include, well, some people like Marwan al-Barouthi, people like Ahmed Sadat, although Although these two do not have sentences to the same level as people who were already released, by the way. It's just that they are more key figures, more prominent figures that will have an impact on the Palestinian political scope and the Palestinian political scene, giving Hamas more credibility altogether. Because Hamas, so far, the people who they released from prison are non-Hamas members, the majority of them. As a matter of fact, many of them belong to the Fatah movement that the Palestinian president leads, technically. Although, of course, there are many problems within that party and many withdrew from them officially, and they've had other organizations after they left. So, Hamas are talking about a prospect of a deal. However, it's phase 2. Israel is not looking like it's wanting to escalate further by the statements that are coming from Israel, the statements that came from the newly appointed IDF chief of staff. They were quite blatant. They were quite clear. We prefer the release of the prisoners of war before going into Gaza. He's saying we have plans for Gaza, total readiness, surprise drill, he said, to the division surrounding Gaza. However, the priority now is to release them. And this is considered to be the IDF chief of staff who is more liked by Benjamin Netanyahu and his allies, especially because he is viewed as more of a militant IDF chief of staff who is more aggressive. And he's having these statements. And the preparations on the ground that we've been talking about several times, the fact that they're not prepared militarily, and all of the other facts like the military has been defeated, it's exhausted, 6,000 confirmed to be dead by the new IDF chief of staff, tens of thousands wounded, over 100,000 with PTSD, and the fact that they don't have their strongest divisions just outside of Gaza, and those more advanced divisions are in Lebanon. So there's progress. There's no confirmation that an agreement has been reached, only a confirmation that progress has been made. And this positive talk is only coming one day after Ansarullah gave the ultimatum, which is 4 days. Meaning Israel would need to find some sort of an excuse to re-allow aid to go into Gaza, humanitarian aid, whether with an agreement or not, because Ansarullah's ultimatum is related to the humanitarian aid. It's not related to having a deal. Therefore, if Israel and Hamas do not have an agreement brokered by the US or not brokered by the US, just the mediators as it usually happened, this means that they can get away with not having one by simply allowing all aid in. But to allow that aid in, Israel would need to explain to the Israeli public, who they're constantly brainwashing, of course, that there is progress. Hamas will be releasing people. We're not going to confirm that we're going to end the war. Therefore, we're going to allow aid in. They're going to have to find some sort of formula, by the way. And this is what it's all about now, finding this formula. The formula of, I don't want to jump down the ladder that I climbed on, and I would need to justify allowing that aid in to my psychopathic followers, to my psychopathic cult. Meaning, the next 3 days are detrimental. Detrimental, especially in relation to allowing the aid into Gaza, which is very important on its own. Because even if we don't reach an agreement on phase 2, it's very important for the aid to get into Gaza. So Ansarullah would have scored a massive point if they do that. And both Israel and the United States know the amount of leverage that Ansarullah have. Ansarullah showed everyone the past 15 months that they can dictate what happens at the Red Sea, and everyone supporting Israel will pay a price. And they have. Israel paid the biggest price. Eilat port went bankrupt. Their economic situation total collapse, degraded twice by Moody's to just one level above investment worthy, which is something very significant. The United States knows that, and the Genocide Coalition know that too, and they don't want that trouble. And by the way, Egypt doesn't want that too. Because whether you're talking about international trade or just trade related to Israel, it will inevitably affect the numbers going through the Suez Canal, affecting therefore Egyptian economy as well. And despite that big effect and big impact on Egypt, by the way, they haven't been that hostile with Ansarullah, who they already have a problem with. They've had problems with them. Egypt, the Egyptian government, they had problems with the government of Ansarullah. So the next 2 to 3 days would be very interesting, because if there is no aid going in, that means Ansarullah will undoubtedly start attacking the Red Sea. In the Red Sea, they have been very effective. They've expelled 4 US aircraft carriers through direct attacks. And every attempt by the Genocide Coalition, led by the United States and Britain, against them failed. Even with direct Israeli attacks, with oil attack, whatever it is, it failed, because they continued, and they continued up until the last day, and they still have the capacity to continue.